Hey, Ted here. I'm in my Chris Craft. I'm going to disconnect everything on my engine and pull my engine out. Got to get the transom redone. 86 boat. It just, the transoms go south, so we got to do that. So I'm going to show you how to take everything apart. So we got to take our 10-pin harness off. We've got to take our fuel line off, our 2 battery cables, throttle and shift cables. We've got to take 4 motor mount lag bolts out, 2 on each side, the 2 back motor mount bolts. And that's about it, and then she's going to come out. So let's get started. I've got to disconnect my fuel line. I've got to first, before I do anything, disconnect the battery. So let's do that first. Don't forget, electrical and gasoline don't mix. Okay, you're always going to take the negative cable off first. Okay, power and ground are disconnected. So I've got these 2 adapters for the hydraulic lines in the back, and I'm going to take these off and I'm going to tie them together with, I believe this is the one for this type. It's an older type that has a flare adapter. The other type uses an O-ring. So let's get that together there. Okay, I got the first line off. Let's see if I can't get the second line off. So it's a 7/16. Make sure you got a snap-on flare wrench. Okay, here we go. Yep, nice. Okay, so that one's off. Okay, so the messy part of the job's done. Got this tied together. Gotten the adapter on there. 2 hydraulic lines are off back there. All right, if I can find a couple of caps, I think I've got some in my parts drawers, I will cap those off as well. Okay, I'm going to spend a couple minutes cleaning things up, and then I'll get back to taking the motor mounts out. So now I'm going to use my impact gun, and I'm going to take the 4 lag bolts that hold the motor mounts onto the strings. I've taken the 2 motor mount lag bolts out down there out of the stringer. This is a good time to check the stringers too while the motor's out. All right, next is the positive and the negative battery cables. Okay, I got the positive cable off the starter, and I've just taken the negative cable off the back of the stud, which is coming out of the flywheel housing. We'll go over a checklist when I'm done with this, so you'll remember to write everything down and to check it off. So if you haven't done this before, like I've done this hundreds of times, make sure you have a checklist. And I can just do it in my head, but this way you can't forget, like, oh, you forgot the cable. You go to pull the engine out of the boat and you tear the starter sewn off the starter. I've seen that before. So we'll keep going. All right, the fuel line's really stuck on the fitting, and it's older fuel line. I'm going to end up updating this to type A115. So I'm just going to cut that off, and I really want to make sure there's no fuel leaks. I'm going to put a 3/8 bolt all the way in onto the shank, not the threads. And then I want to tighten that hose clamp up. Make sure the hose clamp is tight. I know that won't siphon in the bilge. That's safe. That's a big one. All right, I got the exhaust hoses disconnected on both sides. I've got my 10-pin harness disconnected. I've got my fuel line disconnected. I'm going to now disconnect my shift and throttle cables. Okay, next I'm going to bring you down into the back side of the engine, and we've got to take the two back bolts out. These can be troublesome. These are very, as I always say, not entertaining bolts to get out sometimes. Sometimes they're frozen into the aluminum housing if somebody didn't grease them when they put them in, like from the factory. I've run into where I've actually had to jack the engine up, pull it up with a chainsaw and try to get in here, take all the exhaust off, and cut the bolts off with a Sawzall. So that's the head of the bolt right there. It takes a 3/4 inch socket and it goes through the backside of the aluminum bell housing. It goes through a double washer, and then it goes through the transom assembly here, and then on the bottom of it there's an aluminum nut, and that aluminum nut is sometimes freezes to that bolt. So if you ever do take them out and you're going to put them back on, make sure that you grease them up really, really well. The other one's on the other side, and also here, my camera will go back and forth. So I've taken the hose clamp off. I got to take the water hose off the back of the transom assembly here. So that's the next thing that I've got to do. I'm going to pull that off so I can get to the bolt that's underneath that hose. So if these two bolts come out, then we'll go through the checklist, and I'll go through exactly, what it is that we've done. Okay, I've got my 24-inch breaker bar here with about a foot of 1/2 inch extension and a 3/4 inch. And I've actually broken the last bolt loose, which is nice. So these are going to come out. But this is definitely what you want to try to do, is get a breaker bar on there and try to get them loose. If it doesn't come loose to the left, then try to tighten a little bit just to try to break the fastener loose, because you got a steel bolt going to an aluminum nut. It's a strange design that they came up with. So make sure you try to break it loose first with a breaker bar, and then if that works, then you can put a ratchet or an impact gun if you want. But remember, you're doing a steel bolt and aluminum, so I do not recommend using an impact gun. A ratchet here keeps the temperature down so that the aluminum doesn't gall up. The last thing you want to do is have that aluminum nut gall up on the threads of this bolt, and then you're really in a bad way. So just 2 cents for that.